David.
Good morning, Sophie. How are
Good
you?
morning. Good, thank you. How are you going?
I am fine. I'm enjoying life, keeping busy. Unlike some people having holidays on the beach, I believe you've been away.
I have, yeah, all of last week. A friend from New Zealand has immigrated over to the UK, as many Kiwis do. So we went to Formentera in Spain, and I can't recommend it enough. White sand beaches, uh, dangerous mopeds. Unfortunately, my friend had a wee accident, but he was fine. But they're very dangerous. But if you're going to learn somewhere, you'd learn there. I was going to say as well, actually. So we've got Daz next week. You can tell Janice, I've got a big bag of t-shirts, socks, candy, all of the Firmcheck merch for her to take back home for you.
Oh, brilliant! That sounds lovely. Right, yes, and we've got Accountex next month, haven't we?
We do. Yeah, we do. Yeah. Big hairy conference. It's gonna be very mad that whole week. But it'll be exciting. It'll be exciting to see people in person as well.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay.
I'm doing a session there. I'm speaking there on the
You
second.
are. Yes, yeah, you are. I'm sure as standard you'll have people standing up in the back who couldn't get a seat. AML is
Well,
a hot topic.
it is a hot topic. Yeah, I suppose we'd better get round to talking about AML, hadn't we?
We should, but I was going to share with our audience that, what was it? Someone gave you socks with your face on them? Just you've got a
Yes.
super fan somewhere.
Yes, indeed. I have got a pair of socks with my face on. I'm not wearing them at the moment, but yes.
Okay, cool, fantastic. So everyone should have migrated into the room by now. Lovely to see all of you. Some of you would have been at the AML Summit and seen David and I there. If that's the case, put a little hand up in the chat. When we were at FAB, it was so awesome to meet some of you in person. The feedback was so great. Hi, Debbie. Nice to see you again. So today, when you submitted to register for this webinar, we asked you a question: what was your burning AML question? And we had some come through. What we'll do here is we'll answer those, but if any during the conversation come up that you want to add, just pop them in the chat. If they're of a sensitive nature in that you're worried about compliance and want to keep it private, you can email me at sophie@firmcheck.com. We can either bring it up in an email directly to you, maybe is how we can answer that. So this is a safe space. No questions silly, right, David?
That is absolutely true. And I have to say, I'm still learning stuff about AML. So, don't be surprised if you feel you don't know everything. It's absolutely the case for all of us.
Yeah. And that's why that's why we wanted to do this webinar as well, because I didn't know what AML was 7 months ago at all. Had a very loose understanding, whereas you've been in the industry with battling AML for how many years?
I've been doing AML for 20 years plus, I suppose. Yeah. And I've been an accountant for generations,
Generations. Well, that's why we kind of, with the webinar, I'm at the beginning of my journey and you're established in your journey. So it's kind of that like meeting in the middle of trying to meet in the middle, really. Yeah. Fantastic. So just ask questions as they come up. We were going to quickly share about the consultation document that the government put forward, David, if you wanted to give a little bit of insight into that.
There's a couple of things happening in the AML world, which I'll just mention quickly. One is this consultation about AML supervision. And the government put forward like 4 options, ranging pretty much from stay as we are now and tweak it a little bit to what I might call the nuclear option of saying sweep away all the AML supervision by the professional bodies and HMRC and create a new AML supervision body for accountants and lawyers, a new like government-run body. So take it away from ICA, WACCA and ICB and all these people. What they're actually going to do, we don't know. There is, I did hear some sort of a third-hand whisper that they might actually do that, of sweeping everything away and take it all on themselves. But that seems like a bit of an expensive option. And knowing government as we do, they tend to go for the cheap option. And the cheap option will be just tweaking the present thing a bit, giving OPBAS a few more powers to kick the professional bodies. And then, of course, the professional bodies kick us. And that's how it cascades down. So that was one thing going on in AML that I wanted to mention. Another thing that I'm seeing recently, I spend a lot of time with accountants, spend a disproportionate amount of time with accountants who've got AML problems, obviously. And one or two of them, the problems have got so bad that their professional body has kicked them out. And they've thought, well, okay, so I'll register with HMRC and carry on as before. And the only difference really is going to be that I don't have to pay that subscription money to the professional body. I'll be paying something to HMRC. What they found is that HMRC now is taking a bit of a harder line. And they're taking the view, it's not our job to pick up other people's rubbish. And so they have, when people have applied for AML supervision with HMRC, they've come back and said, no, we don't think, based on your past record, that you're going to comply with the regulations. So we're going to refuse your registration, which means 30 days from today, you've got to cease in business. And we're taking off you your HMRC agent codes, so you won't be able to file stuff online as an agent. Now, that is a mega problem for them to be told, basically, in 30 days, you've got to close down. So what I want to say to this group, effectively, is do not make the mistake of just assuming that if you fall out with your professional body, you can just go and sign on with HMRC and everything will be fine, because quite possibly it won't. Having said that, I really don't want to frighten people. I've got this mug. I don't know if you can read it. It says, relax, I've seen worse. And on the other side, it says, I'm in AML compliance. And yeah, somebody said to me the other day that if they'd realized how easy it was to comply with AML, they'd have started sooner. But they'd been to all these talks and everybody said, oh, you're going to prison. This is really bad. This is really serious. And they just sort of ran away and hid. So I am trying to say to people, look, if you've got a problem, we can fix this. You know, it might take a little bit of time, but we can fix this. We can sort it out. We can get it all done, and then you'll be fine. Yeah. So hopefully, yeah. Debbie says fear is a big thing. I don't want to do fear. I want to do, we can fix this. Talk to me, and we'll sort it out.
Totally. Yeah.
Write on there for rather a long time.
And it's the same for Firmcheck too. Like, obviously, well, if you maybe not obviously, we're an AML software provider. And so to sell an AML software provider, it would be very easy for us to pull that lever of being like, if you don't use a software, you go to jail. Or that fear, right, is you need to use this, otherwise you're in big trouble. And that's just not how, and that's not what Firmcheck does. And that's just not helpful, because you're already scared. You don't need to be met with more fear. It's not great. And it is, again, what we talked about yesterday. I fear that maybe we do a little bit too much pre-talking before we actually get on the stage, and that when you read the law, when it comes to AML, it's using scary words. You could be fined, your practice could be closed, you could go to jail. Whereas in reality, that's actually not what the case always is. So we hope that this webinar as well is kind of gives that little bit more of a bridge between the law and reality of that law. Yeah. I will just bring it back around to that consultation document, because it seamlessly flows into our first question. But I highly recommend you have a read of that document. It is well written in simple language, and it gives great clarity into the confusion that's happened with AML laws and their interpretation and the words that the government intended to use versus what they actually meant. So you would think that that wouldn't have happened because it's the government. But anyway, there's many problems there. But in that document, it did say that they understood that the different accounting bodies have implemented different AML requirements on their, would you say constituents? Is that the right word? Or members?
Members, I think that's so.
Yeah. So we had a question, and I'll read it verbatim. Why different UK regulators have different rules? For example, the ACCA has stricter rules than ICAEW and HMRC, and the law itself makes compliance a nightmare when there is no consistency in the rules. Why is this the case, David?
Yeah, well, I did a talk at Accountex in Manchester a few months ago. And one of my slides, I thought humorously, but maybe not, labeled the scale of death.
I remember that.
And at one end, it had supervisory bodies who are just nice and okay. And at the other end, it had supervisory bodies who are awful and rough. And unfortunately, the CEO of the supervisory body that I put very worst on the scale of death was in the back of the room watching me speak, and she wasn't very thrilled. But it was intended to be tongue-in-cheek. But yes, the supervisory bodies do have different ways of doing things and different expectations. To take a very simple example, with ICAEW, they will expect you to have had a criminal record check for yourself. A disclosure and barring system basic check, as it's called. They will expect you to have that document when they do a supervisory review. Other supervisory bodies, I don't think, do expect you to do that. They expect you to say, yes, I haven't got any criminal convictions. I haven't been convicted of fraud. I haven't been, convicted of tax evasion. But they don't expect you to have actually gone through the process of getting the check. So very often when somebody asks me a question, what do I do about this? Is an electronic check sufficient ID verification, or do I actually need to see a passport? Or another question, I saw David Winch's passport 3 years ago. It expired in 2022. Do I have to go back to him now and say, let me see your passport again, your new one? And my answer to that question, I start off by saying, who's your supervisory body?
Who's been in your ear?
Yeah, because until I know that, I can't answer the question of, do you need to do it again? And that's a bit crazy. And as you say, that comes back to our consultation. If the government sweep away the AML roles of the supervisory bodies and impose a new body of their own making, then we will presumably have one set of rules that apply to all. I sound a bit like something out of Lord of the Rings there, don't I?
One body to rule them all.
That's it. And in some ways that would be simpler. But yeah, the question is, why do they? Yeah, why do they?
Because they can, right? They can kind of
make different views and different expectations, and one of the supervisory bodies, for example, is CIMA, the management accountants body. Now, obviously, their focus of what their members do is rather different from ICAEW, who have a lot more external auditors. ACCA has a much more global focus, and so on and so on. So they all have different themes. And one or two of the bodies, as we know, have their own portals which they require their members to use. But that's another story. Sorry, have I wandered off the topic?
No. Whenever we talk, my brain is full. It fills up with all of the knowledge that you have, and it's all critical. I think I did want to just circle back because we do get this question constantly, and we did get it at the AML Summit, and I did see someone asked you this question at FAB, is, excuse me, when it comes to expiry of passport, driver's license, etc., It does depend on your accounting body, but what's your advice? If I have a client and their passport becomes expired, am I no longer AML compliant because that document's expired?
Well, you answer the question in the question. Depends on your supervisory body.
Because I know the answer, but I'm trying to word it like
my answer, from a common sense point of view, is I'm David Winch. If I was David Winch 3 years ago and I had a passport that expired in 2022, I'm still David Winch, even though that passport has expired. If I am smiled upon by the Prime Minister and I become Lord Winch of Weston-super-Mare, then I've got a new name, and you've got to do some ID around Lord Winch. That happens more often, of course, with ladies who get married and will change their name, or sometimes don't. But unless something changes, I myself wouldn't say that you need to go back and redo that ID. But having said that, some clients, I'm told, actually welcome an email from the accountant saying, you do realize your passport expires in 3 months and you should get a new one. And you mentioned going to Spain. You know, there's been stuff in the news about people going to the continent or not going because they've been refused exit at the airport because their passport is nearly out of date or whatever. So maybe you can put that forward as, hey, an extra good thing we do for you, our clients. We let you know when your passport's out of date. But again, depends on the supervisory body.
Totally. So basically, unless my name changes from Sophie Maxwell to Sophie Styles, as in Harry Styles, when him and I get married, then you don't need to, you're like, yes, that will be what happens.
That'll be nice, yeah.
Then you don't need to renew that ID unless, they have that name change, gender change as well, or title change, as in Lord.
Address change as well. Address change can be a little bit more tricky because if, Sophie, you were to move tomorrow from where you live now to some other place, and I asked you for a utility bill with the new address, or I asked you, or I did an electronic church search against you for the new address, it might not show up. And so there is potentially a problem of just a bit of a delay in the search, the electronic search, for example, getting that, or you getting some paper documents. You know, I do still get paper utility bills, but not everybody does.
It's the environment, David.
Yes.
Gotta be cautious. And I didn't exist in the UK until 7 months ago. So if I had an accountant, that would be a little bit of a downtime before you could get that information from me. Okay, should we swing into the question list? We had a simple question of just keeping up to date, question mark.
You're doing it. This is it. There are actually a lot of, my inbox is full of invitations to attend webinars, not so much live events. Of course, years ago, we used to have to turn up in some hotel in Bradford or something and hear somebody speaking to us. Now it's all online. There is also training companies do videos and so on. So yes, it is possible to keep up to date. And if you're in a professional body, most likely your professional body emails you stuff as well. So it shouldn't be difficult. It is an important point is to keep a note of what you do to keep up to date, because when you get a supervisory visit, one of the things they'll ask to see is your training record, and hopefully you have one. Well, more than hopefully, it's essential you have one, and you're going to record that you attended this webinar today on the 10th of April. And you're checking, aren't you?
I'm checking. I was like, did he?
Is it really the 10th of April? An hour's CPD and so on and so on. I see a question with a proof of address. Can you certify this via Zoom?
Yeah. Bring that to the front there.
Textbook answer is probably no. but I'm really trying to avoid just being a nuisance for the sake of being a nuisance. Quick story. I do court appearances, as I've mentioned, and I was in a court case in the Isle of Jersey, and witnesses were appearing from all over the world, and that the judge was saying to them, right, can you hold up your passport to front of the cameras? No, it's out of focus. We can't. Is that you? Is that actually, you know?
Oh, it's embarrassing. Yeah.
It was horrendous, you know.
Yeah.
But ultimately, they accepted that somebody was who he said he was, based on a rather blurry view of the passport. You know, what do you do? Ultimately, this thing is supposed to be about common sense. Again, sorry, quick one.
It's okay.
I heard recently that the same guy had been arrested for driving offences.
Oh, yeah.
And he was a Bulgarian guy, and he'd been arrested all over the country for different driving offences. You know, he's obviously a terrible driver. And the police checked up, and they found that actually what they'd written down as his name was the Bulgarian for driving licence. So they hadn't actually got his name at all. And there's a point there, a wider point about documents, in that we are not document examiners. We are not going to be able to spot a fake Bulgarian passport. What we are, though, expert in is people and their financial affairs. And what we should be able to spot is dodgy behavior, dodgy financial behavior, more than dodgy documents. So kind of that's something to remember. So I try not to get too hung up on the documents, but yes, we do have to verify somebody's name. We do have to verify their address, and if the only way you can do it is on Zoom, well, that's better than nothing, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah, totally.
And
Totally.
keep a note that you've done.
Yes, yeah. The date as well that you received that too. So part of Firmcheck, what we do, we take on your documents, import them into Firmcheck, and in that process, we do look at the document to assess what it is. And often we see a photocopy of a driver's license, excuse me, or a utilities bill, but there's no date on that document when that information was obtained. So then, therefore, it's not relevant documentation because it's just a photocopy from literally 1995 sometimes when we ask them. So back into just a point I was going to say as well, into keeping up to date, I thought it was stock standard, but Google alerts and setting up a Google alert, I might get my colleague Kevin, who's the general manager of Firmcheck. He's in here somewhere. I'll get him because I taught him how to do it. But you can set up a Google alert for AML news in the UK. I have it so when there's fines that come through, new technologies or other such, you just get a little email and it just tells you, and then that's you keeping up to date. But maybe not from your body's perspective, but for your own mind, just so you know what you're doing and what's going on in the world.
He's listening to you. I can see that.
He is. No, he's helping out today. I'm very grateful. Okay, so the next question. Should we annually ask our clients to complete a form in case there are any changes such as moved home, trading address, and are now associated with a politically exposed person? So should we ask this in a form annually from people?
We talk a lot about KYC, about know your client, and that it describes as well the general contact that we have with clients throughout the year, all the time, about their accounts, about their business, about their girlfriend, about whatever it is we're talking about. And so hopefully you would get to know if somebody's moved house, or you would get to know if they've had a new relationship with an MP
Harry
or
Styles.
whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not sure he's a PEP actually. Sorry to well, he might be high net worth. Yeah, let's say he's high net worth. So I would expect you to sort of gather that information anyway without going through the process of filling in a form. Of course, annually you're going to review your AML information, probably when you complete a set of accounts or complete a tax return or whatever. So hopefully you will be doing some documentation about annual review and ongoing monitoring and all these lovely phrases that we like to roll out. But I'm not going to say to you, create an extra form saying, have you moved house? Because client is going to just look at you stupid and think, well, I would have told you if I'd moved house because it has to go on my tax return, you know.
Yeah, you would know.
Yeah.
As the accountant, you would know. Yeah.
Hopefully you would know. So I wouldn't say fill in a form. The PEP one is a little bit different, but again, I would hope that you would have an idea of any clients who might be more likely to get involved in PEPs. I mean, obviously, if you are acting for the local MP or the local chief of police or whatever, chief constable, you know, you would know that anyway.
Yeah, and it comes back to what we discussed yesterday, is the expectation that you put on yourself as an accountant. It's not your responsibility to know who, I don't know what the spy agency in the UK is called, but to know if you're, pardon?
MI5 will do.
Oh yes, that rings a bell from all the like movies I've watched. So it's not your responsibility to assess if your client's part of the MI5 or whatever have you. That's not on you. What you're looking at is patterns in behavior and those elements. Yeah. It's not, you don't have to find nuclear weapons. Like that's not what your responsibility is as an accountant. But it is if they're spending £100,000 on odd stuff. Anyway.
You mentioned nuclear weapons. Was there a question about proliferation financing?
I believe there was. Oh, how to check if a client is involved in proliferation. Where does one look to find out about this activity?
Right.
Good segue, David.
Yes. The answer that I would give is ask them. Again, what proliferation financing is about is financing in relation to anything connected with the manufacture, sale, haulage, whatever, of nuclear weapons, biological weapons, chemical weapons, radiological weapons. And this was a thing that's been introduced into the money laundering regs. And if you like, it makes a lot of sense from a Whitehall perspective, from a government perspective, to think, oh, here's a risk of, you know, people might be doing things with nuclear weapons. Let's put something in the money laundering regs to make people report it if it happens. And then, unfortunately, that applies to all of us, dare I say, little people in high streets and spare bedrooms up and down the country doing sets of accounts. We've now got to mention proliferation financing in our firm-wide risk assessment, in our policies, controls and procedures document. But what are the chances really of you know your clients, what are the chances of any of them being in any way involved in that sort of stuff? Now, you might have some clients who, yeah, they might be. And in that case, ask them. And if you think they're shifty, dodgy clients, then you've got a problem, haven't you? But you know, it's about you knowing your client and what they do. So did I answer that question?
Yeah, no, totally. And I do understand, like, it is the zeros and ones. And oh, sorry, that was a package. I've left a note on my door to say, please don't knock. I will ignore it. So now I've lost my thought. God.
You were talking about proliferation
You
financing.
talk, and I'm going to go yell at this person. Hold on.
So, yeah, I mean, there really is no harm in talking to clients and asking them these sort of questions, and just saying to them, look, I know this probably seems like a daft question, but to comply with the regulations, I've just got to sort out that do you have any involvement in the manufacture, sale, hire, transport, dealing in nuclear, biological, chemical, radiological weapons? And when they look at you like you've fallen off a Christmas tree and say no, you've covered it. Right.
I've completely lost my train of thought. I gave him an earful. I was like, they'll be fine. And I put a smiley face. Please don't knock. So I'm so sorry, everybody. But Amazon, come on. Just come back later.
Can I hop to a question about PCCs?
Please.
Do you have that question in front of you, Sophie? In which case you might read it out.
PCCs.
What's CDD? That one.
Yes. What? Thank you, David. What CDD do I need to undertake for an independent examination of a church's PCCs accounts?
Yeah. Now, I've done a few of these in my time over the years, and I suspect, Sophie, coming from New Zealand, you probably don't even know what a PCC is. So just very quickly, in the Church of England, the areas are split into little parcels called parishes, and each parish has a vicar and a committee to help run the church and the church's activities, and that committee is called the PCC, or the Parochial Church Council. And sometimes they have a little bit of money coming in from donations and this and that, and they make donations and do things and pay some expenses. And so some poor unfortunate person gets dropped on to be the treasurer of the PCC and prepare annual accounts, quite possibly somebody who doesn't understand accounting records at all. And then some even more unfortunate accountant gets asked if they will do an audit or a check or an independent examination of the PCC accounts. And the fee for this typically is a cup of tea and a piece of cake. So it's all terribly informal and whatever. And in that sense, it's a bit like other unincorporated associations like conservative clubs, Labour clubs, golf clubs sometimes, and so on, where there might be, particularly in those sort of places, there might be a bar and bar takings, there might be fruit machines and that sort of thing. And so there can actually be quite a lot of money washing about. And it's recorded by people who perhaps don't understand particularly well what they're doing, who might be part-timers. There's probably a committee of people, some of whom take an interest and some of them don't really, and annual accounts are prepared and so on. Now, the reason I'm ranting on about these is that I have had experience on the criminal work that I do of cases of stewards, bar stewards particularly, stealing cash from businesses, defrauding the societies and what have you. And there is generally a rather lax and loose and informal set of accounts and informal set of records. People do a bit when they've got a bit of spare time and often don't get round to it, and it's a bit of a mess. And so unfortunately, although those jobs for the accountants don't pay well, far from it, and you kind of do it because you get embarrassed into having to say you'll do it. They can be, really, from an AML point of view, they can be quite high risk. And there really is a problem. And people are going to hate you if you say, you know, I'm going to give an adverse opinion on this because I don't know whether all the money's in there. And, you know, people think, oh, what a pain in the whatever this person is. Who does he think he is trying to cause us this trouble? But it is a difficult area for accountants in practice. In terms of AML, in terms of CDD and ID, you need to, as it were, do the treasurer. You probably need to do the chairman or the head man, but you don't need to do all the members of a committee. And all I would say is just be very careful in your detailed work, dealing with the cash, dealing with donations or takings or whatever, to be alert for the possibility that somebody is stealing the cash. Sorry and all that.
No, and when this question came through, when I read it, I was like, what on earth? But that question is part of why we're sitting here and having these conversations, is those curly, somewhat unique AML concerns, and just like confusion around that, because it's not something everybody would come across every day, right? So no, I thought that was a fantastic question. I have another one. I have a few more. So this one, if the person who asked this question is online, if you'd like to elaborate further as to what you meant, but hopefully we can still answer it here. I just have the question of firm assessment.
Right.
But give me the short of it, I suppose, because we could do a whole nother AML summit on this topic, and we might. So what tell me about firm
I
assessment.
assume that this is a question about the firm-wide risk assessment. And the one thing I would say about firm-wide risk assessment, because as you say, we've got 24 minutes left and I could speak for 24 minutes about firm-wide risk assessments. One thing I would say is that what I like to do when I prepare a firm-wide risk assessment for a firm, or help them prepare to be more accurate, because the information has to come from them, is to start with a paragraph or two which just describes the firm in overall. And now that's if you look at, say, the ACCA template for firm-wide risk assessment, it doesn't have this, but the ICAEW one does, and I think it's useful just to say, right, we're a firm of accountants. We've got one office in Bedford. We've got 2 partners, 8 staff, a couple of contractors. Our clients, we've got about 300 clients. I'm making up all these figures as I 300 clients, of whom 200 are limited companies, 50 are directors of those limited companies. No, that doesn't make sense, but who cares? 50 are self-employed bricklayers, plumbers, plasterers, and whatever, who are CIS registered. And if you don't know who CIS is, Sophie, don't worry, because people listening will. And we do accounts, we do tax returns, we don't have a client bank account, just a general layout, a couple of paragraphs, so that when the supervisor comes to look at your firm, probably the first document he will pick up is the firm-wide risk assessment. And I want him to pick it up, read those first couple of paragraphs, and think to himself, all right, I understand what this firm's about. I understand how it ticks. I know what the points are that I'm going to be looking to see if they've got covered. I know what I don't have to worry about. And then if the supervisor's feeling comfortable, having got 3 or 4 minutes in, you're winning. You want the supervisor to feel comfortable about your firm, not to feel, I don't know what this is about. I don't know what I'm looking at here.
Yeah.
I'm a bit, oh dear.
Yeah. Because they would come in already on the defensive, right? They're like, I'm going to walk in and everything's going to be everywhere. Like, so if you can get, first of all, put a cup of tea in front of them, but if you can then get that good first impression, that's going to make that whole process a lot smoother, right?
Yes,
and
a lot of the time, it's a desktop review. They will be sitting in an office in London or wherever, or at home, looking at stuff and thinking, what do I have here? And I just want them to feel comfortable, relax, and then the review is going to go better.
Yeah. Kevin, who's, as I said, in the background, we did our AML maturity model and research that we shared just in the click below. Kev, do you mind commenting? We did some research on risk assessments, right? And what the statistics of those were. But we've talked before, David, there's some firms that will copy a risk assessment and it says insert text here. And then they've given that to the auditor and been like, I'm good, right? And then even in our, even in people I talk to, like I hear some very interesting things. A firm, I hope he's not here. Bless him if he is, I'm so sorry. But a firm, he'd had it for 20 years. He was selling it to a different, like another accountant. And he goes, yeah, like I don't have my risk assessment. And I was like, never? You never had one? And someone accidentally got the shock on my face, took a photo of me. And I was like, but I tried not, you can read my face. But risk assessment, yeah, that's everything that you do for AML comes under that in the end, really, right? Like it sets out the directive of what you're going to do and what you're going to mitigate when it comes to checking clients.
Yeah, I mean, I do sadly come across people who totally misunderstand AML. And I'm not having a go at them because, you know, AML isn't your number one topic. You know, you've got
and fair enough.
You've got VAT, and AML. But in terms of risk assessment, you've got the firm-wide risk assessment, which is a document which addresses the firm as a whole and the sort of money laundering risks that you have. And then you've got the individual client risk assessment, which is just dealing with that one client and the risk of money laundering in relation to that one client. And I have come across firms who've said, yeah, we do a firm-wide risk assessment, so we don't have to do a client risk assessment.
Which
That's
is
not right.
wrong. That's wrong.
Or who say, well, yeah, we do risk assessments on all our clients, so we don't
need.
That is the firm-wide. And no, it's not. So, yeah, it's just, we need to understand the whole risk assessment philosophy behind the money laundering regs.
Yeah,
which is both a firm-wide risk assessment and an individual client risk assessment. And again, just check it. Sorry, keep talking. Somebody's ID is not a risk assessment. You know, I might know that you're actually Sophie Maxwell, who's married to Harry Styles, but that doesn't tell me anything about the risk of money laundering associated with you as my client.
Yeah. No, and go for it, David. Me as Firmcheck and me as Sophie is just the bridge between the people and you. So this is your show. You go for it. Kevin just put in here, so 1 in 3 in our research, Firmcheck's research, 1 in 3 accounting firms do not have a firm-wide risk assessment. So, and that's your pinnacle of being AML compliant.
Yes,
I know. And people, and as I said, people just tell me openly that, but that's again the whole point of this is just to be that middleman between government and accountants, which is a big task for me anyway and us.
It's not a big job to write a firm-wide risk assessment. It's really
no.
We can fix this, but it does need to be done. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to hustle and move us because we could honestly do 2 hours.
Can I quickly answer a question that's not the one you've picked?
Okay. I will bring this one back up, Suzanne.
The one from James. In doing expert witness work, I'm instructed by solicitors on behalf of their clients. Who do I ID? I do expert witness work, usually for drug dealers, money launderers, fraudsters, and so on, because I do criminal work. Who do I ID? I ID the solicitor because he's my client. And that's very easy because the Law Society keeps a list of solicitors, and you can go online and check that John Smith is indeed a solicitor with Smith & Co. in Warrington. Tick, done. And certainly on the criminal side, there is a load of stuff from the police saying, we arrested Peter Brown at 2300 hours on whenever. And I'm thinking, right, I do need to ID Peter Brown, the ultimate client, rather in the sense that he's a beneficial owner in the lingo. But if the police are satisfied he's Peter Brown, and all these documents on my file from the police have got Peter Brown's the criminal record and so on, then I'll take a quick copy of that, stick it in the AML folder and say, done it. So I don't actually go to the solicitor and say, can I see your electricity bill? I don't actually go to the criminal and say, can I see your passport? I've got it all from the documents already, and that does it. So the answer is yes, you do both, but it's easy.
Perfect. I can't bring up the question again, but I'll read it out from Suzanne. So she asked, I'm a bookkeeper for a couple of PCCs. My supervisory body said I needed to all the trustees, 13 on one PCC, but the accountant doing the independent examination only did one person, the one who instructed them.
Right. And the question is, who's right? Is she right or the accountant who did the independent examination? And the answer I would say is probably both of them are right. If your supervisory body says you've got to do all 13, then you've got to do all 13. The independent examination, he's done the one who instructed him. I'd also do like the chairman of the committee or whatever, the head honcho, if you like, of the PCC and the person that I'm dealing with, the treasurer.
Perfect. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So if your new client isn't a British national but is a resident in the UK, what form of photographic ID is acceptable, and do you need proof of residence? We did already touch on this a little bit, but
yeah,
just leave it.
I'm going to say you're not an immigration lawyer. You're an accountant, and so you don't need, for example, unless your client asks you to, you don't need to check that person is entitled to work in the UK. That's an immigration issue. It's not an issue for the accountant. It's an issue for his employer, certainly. In terms of ID, yeah, he's probably got a passport, but as I've said, you won't know if it's a fake passport. You hopefully will know if he's a fake person. If he does weird things. If he comes along and says, look, I've got £10,000 in cash here, I'd like to put it in your firm's client account and send it off to Colombia. No.
No, thank you. And we did talk about this yesterday, and it does happen at Firmcheck also, and I can imagine it happening for accountants, is that you become, like, some accountants say that their clients tell them that they're a member of their family, or, you know, you've been with them for 10 years or whatever have you, and there's that trust, and then your client's asking you actually questions that you're not responsible to answer in terms of other areas of law or whatever have you, and then you're in this prickly situation where you're kind of answering questions that aren't, like, you shouldn't really be answering. And it's the same for Firmcheck. People ask us, am I AML compliant, or how do I do a risk assessment? And please ask them, but we're a software provider, so that's why I've got David and other friends, you know, who I can lean on to connect people.
Yeah, but a danger for an accountant, Sophie, you're an accountant, and I ask you whether I'm AML compliant. You say, don't really know, but I'll say yes, because he seems like a nice guy. All of a sudden, you've taken on that responsibility. And if you've got it wrong, it can bounce back on you. So whilst we all try and help our clients, please don't extend your own responsibilities unnecessarily. You're not an immigration lawyer. You can't explain that. You're not required to check whether somebody can work in the UK and so on. So yeah, don't just get yourself stretched into areas that you're not really happy to advise on.
Yeah, and the problem is if you answer it one time just to be helpful, you'll get another question again in the future. They'll go, I can go to them for advice, and they'll keep coming to ask you those questions. So yeah, no, definitely. Okay, so this one I really liked. Well, I don't really like, but I like this question. How do you check whether a client has a criminal record or been guilty of fraud or dishonesty?
Well, you can't. I mean, you can't go to the police and say, is my client John Smith a thief and a villain? Is he known to you? police ain't going to tell you. If you do an electronic check, it's not going to show that information. On the criminal side, as I say, I often act for drug dealers who are currently in prison. I do an electronic check on them. Fine. And it doesn't say he's in prison. What it might say, which gives me a clue, is that he's not on the electoral roll for the most recent year. And the reason is because he's in Wormwood Scrubs. That sort of information, unfortunately, or fortunately, if you prefer, isn't readily available to accountants and members of the public. You can check if you yourself have a criminal record by doing a disclosure and barring check, but you can't do that on other people. So what you're left with is you could Google. You see these stories about romance fraud, and sometimes if people had only Googled the name of their new boyfriend or girlfriend, they'd have found that they pop up all over the place. But if somebody's been done for a little bit of cannabis possession or something like that, it may not even have been reported in the press. And so you may not pick it up. You may not know.
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah, that adverse media check, you can just do it manually. Just pop it in Google, their name or the company that they're associated with or associated with in the past. Even that is further than maybe what you need to take it, but that enough ticks that box that you've done a quick check. Is that right? Am I kind of going down the right lane with that?
Yeah.
Or am I giving bad advice where I shouldn't be giving advice, where I've just told people not to give those advices?
I had an accountant contact me saying, can you help me explain something? My client sent me a link to a YouTube video of a load of soil. So he said, and I don't know why. So I played the YouTube video, he gave me the link, but the difference was I put the sound on and he hadn't. And the client was saying, so the police came and they took away all my cannabis plants.
It's just a graveyard of its plants.
Yeah.
Oh.
So, yeah.
Why am I getting a video of dirt?
I'm not sure that's overly useful, but maybe if he'd have Googled.
Oh, no, I love the funny stories that we hear. Yeah. No, that's perfect. Yeah, no, it's not your responsibility to be a detective. Again, I really want to answer, well, for you to answer, I definitely can't answer this meaty question from Emily. This might be the last question of the day because I feel like we can really get into it. I'll read it end to end, even though everybody can read. But with regards to ID and gathering documents, if you verify someone electronically, would the frequency of this be the same as with getting new ID? Similarly, it's only when I'm on camera I lose my ability to talk, but I can read. With a proof of address, if you're verified by a hard copy, how long would you need to wait to request a new document? That's the bones of it.
So if you've got some ID which is like 10 years old, do you have to redo it? I'm going to say depends on your supervisory body, which is a cop-out, isn't it? If you think to yourself, I better redo John's ID because this is really old, then redo it. And maybe having a sort of note to redo IDs, say every 5 years or something, wouldn't be a bad thing. The money laundering regs don't actually say anything specific about having to redo. They talk about ongoing monitoring and so on, but they don't say that ID falls off a cliff after 5 years or something like that. But yeah, okay. Particularly if you've got a decent relationship with your client where you can say, hey, can you let me have some docs? But bear in mind that it might be the case that the client is in any case providing you with documents in relation to the usual accounts prep and tax return prep stuff, which might have their up-to-date address on. So you might be able to just do a quick copy of that, stick it in the AML and say, yeah, checked, David still lives there on 10th of April 2024.
No, fantastic. Great. I thought you were going to go meteor, but that's perfect. That's perfect timing, because I was going to ask, there was a question that slipped through before from Mohammed. Please advise 5 things we must do to be AML compliant in the order. It was between us that we talked about those 6 points to be AML compliant. Is that right, David? Or
yes, we did talk about 6 points, and I can't now remember what the 6 points were, but let's have a go.
I was gonna cop out and say that they're in the maturity model report, but if you want to give it a go.
Yeah, that's an excellent answer. Let's give it a go. So you need a firm-wide risk assessment. You need a policies, controls and procedures document. You need training records. You need individual client ID checks and individual client risk assessments. That's 5. What have I missed, Sophie?
We have 6. Sorry, I'm going to cop out because I was looking at the questions. I'm so sorry.
Also, there's a question, what if I don't use AML ID check software? This is where Firmcheck cut me off and pull out my microphone.
See you guys later. Thanks for attending.
And I say, you don't actually have to have AML software. You can do it by paper. But having said that, you don't have to have accounts preparation software to prepare accounts. But hey, it makes it easier, and what the AML software is trying to do is to make it easier to do your AML compliance, and also to give you some sort of structure so that when you think, I saw John's passport and I kept a copy somewhere, I wonder where that is. With the software, there's a place for it and it's in that place and you can go straight to it. So when your supervisor says, do you have you say, oh yeah, I've got them.
And thank you for adding that caveat, because that is what Firmcheck is it aims to make it easier. It doesn't, you can not use the software, but if you're managing it in Excel, if you start getting larger than 50 clients to any more than that, the manual work time begins to get a little bit strenuous. So you can get away with using nothing, but Firmcheck's efforts just to try and make it more easier. I'll leave Kev. We do have a masterclass, a Firmcheck masterclass. If you're wanting to look at the Firmcheck product, which Kev has just popped down there. But 6, we've talked about them all damn day. Need to be registered by a supervisory body.
Yes, thank you, Kevin. Thank you for sorting us out with number 6. And Mohammed said he missed us talking about the 5th. Now, is there going to be a recording of this available?
There is, yes. So post this, we'll package it up and send it to everybody who's here and those that registered and didn't attend. So we can include that in an email. Is that what you're thinking? Sorry.
So I'm just thinking he can play it back and catch up with the one he missed.
Oh, you mean he noted it down. Got it. Okay, cool. Fantastic. So we can wrap it up here. But before you go, we actually have a really cool announcement, don't we, David? No, we do. We are really excited to be putting on this session again next month. The volume of people who registered for the event and the amount of people that are sat here today, we are really excited to do this again next month. The registration is just popped up on your screen there. This is in an effort to create a safe space where you can ask your AML questions. None of them are silly or whatever have you. And definitely we hope to help those. We set that out to hope to help those smaller firms that might not have the time to dedicate to training or to pay someone to help or those sorts of elements. So that's what this is here. This is here to do and to help you. Relax. Yeah. Yeah, I had a woman email me yesterday, and I know she'll watch the recording, but it's that fear of not being AML compliant, not having the time. But all of you are here. There's 46 of you sitting here are here because you want to do better. So you are in good company. Quickly, I will be with Firmcheck at DAS next week in London. I'm based in London, and we'll be there. Please come up and introduce yourself. In a world post-COVID, it's so nice meeting people in person, and the illusion that I'm in an office has been ruined by the Amazon delivery driver. So I do work from home. So seeing people in person is amazing. Please introduce yourself. I have treats to bribe you with to come say hello. Same for David. You're not talking at
DAS. Sophie, just for everybody who doesn't know, DAS is
the Digital Accountancy Show. It is Tuesday and Wednesday next week in London. Thank you. And I've never been. I've heard it's hectic though, with laser lights and smoke and like a club environment. I'm a little bit nervous, but it'll be great. We hope to see you there. If not, we'll be at Accountex London, where David's doing a talk on, what was the topic?
AML, would you believe? And it's on the second day. I think it's 2 p.m. on the second day.
No, fantastic. I think that's it. We've got the masterclass. Please keep in touch. I saw someone ask about the AML Summit certificates. Yes, I have heard that a wee bit. Can you please email me at sophie@firmcheck.com? David's LinkedIn is also great for you to keep up to date with where he is and what he's talking about. And same for mine and Firmcheck. Feel free to follow us there. I think that covers it. Hopefully we'll see most of you next month. Drop me a line as well if you had any further questions or feedback. But I'll leave it at that. How does that sound?
Yeah. Thanks, Sophie. It's been great to spend an hour with you again.
Yes. Yeah. We could have talked for much longer, but we'll let people get back to it. But thanks for everyone for being here, and we look forward to seeing you again. Cool.
Bye for
Bye.
now.
Bye.